Okay, in this video, I'm just going to do a quick review of the hand trick and show you a different way. If you're not getting the hand trick, there is a little chart that I found that maybe you can draw the chart and that might help you. So we're going to do that, and then we'll go through a couple examples of using that hand trick or that first quadrant value and reference angles to find exact values. So let's look. So remember the hand trick here. 0 is your pinky. This is your palm of your left hand. Pi over 6 and 30, pi over 4 and 45, pi over 3 and 30, pi over 3 and 60, and then pi over 2 and 90. So remember that whatever you're looking for, so say you're looking for instance, sine of pi over 6. So you're going to put this finger down, and cosine comes first. So cosine of pi over 6 is here, which is the square root of, that x is the number of fingers, square root of 3 over 2. Where sine is the square root of the number of fingers below that finger, which is 1. And of course, square root of 1 is 1, is 2. Now this will work with any of the values. So say one more time, we want cosine of pi over 3. That's going to be 1/2. And sine of pi over 3 is going to be square root of 3 over 2. Okay? Now, if you're just not getting that, you can draw this chart on your paper. So we have a chart. This is our first quadrant, 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90. So all the special values in the first quadrant. So let's first remember that 0 and 90 are those axis values. So at 0, remember this is 0, this is 90, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and then again at 2 pi. So if we go over to 0, that means we went out 1. So if I go out 1, that's to the right 1, which is a positive 1, and sine is 0. If I go to 90, that means I went up 1. Up 1 means sine is 1 and cosine is 0 because I didn't go left or right. Remembering that sine is y, cosine is x. Now we know the other values from our hand trick are all over the square root of 2. Okay? Now the trick to this little chart is sine starts at 0 and then counts up. So you have square root of 1 is 1, square root of 2, square root of 3, and then positive 1. Cosine counts down. So it starts at 1, square root of 3, square root of 2, 1, and then 0. Okay? So if you just cannot get the hand trick, then I would suggest drawing this chart. The thing about the chart is you need to make sure that your numbers are in order. And of course, you need to remember that sine starts at 0 and cosine starts at 1, which is where 0 is. So this is the coordinate 1, 0. Okay? So however you need to memorize that, either one is acceptable. You can draw the chart on your quiz or on your test. The hand trick to me is just simpler, easier reference, and it's right there in front of your face, not something you have to necessarily memorize per se, but whatever works for you works for me. Okay? So let's look at cosine of 17 pi over 4. So first of all, I know that my reference angle is pi over 4, and we've discussed this at length. The reference angle obviously has to have the same denominator, so I know it's going to be pi over 4. So whether you're using the hand trick or the chart, I know that cosine at pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. Okay, that's my numeric value. To figure out whether it's positive or negative, I have to figure out what quadrant 17 pi over 4 stops in. Okay, so I'm going to look. So remember, if I'm doing pi over 4, this is going to be 0. This is going to be 2 pi over 4. This is going to be 4 pi over 4 because 2 over 4 is 1/2, pi over 2. 4 over 4 is 1. This one, 12 pi over 8. Okay, so 3 pi over 2. And then, of course, this one is going to be 8 pi over 4. Okay? Oh, well, I could have done, sorry. I should have done 6 pi over 4. Okay, so I know that I have went past 1 full revolution. So 1 full revolution is going to give me that 8 pi over 4, which is less than 17 pi over 4. So I'm going to go another revolution, and that's going to get me to 2 revolutions, which is 16 pi over 4. Okay, so now I know I'm 1/4 past 1 full revolution, which means that I am right here. This is my reference angle, pi/4, in the first quadrant where cosine is positive, so that is my final answer. Okay? So let's look at 9pi/4. So same thing, pi/4 is my reference angle. So pi/4, I know cosine is square root of 2/2. So I need to figure out what quadrant 9pi/4 is in. So do the same thing kind of mentally in my brain. I'm just thinking, okay, so I know a full revolution is 8pi/4 because 8 divided by 4 is 2 pi. So one more, again, I get that pi/4, and cosine is positive in the first quadrant. So sine of -720. So first of all, remember that negative angles turn counterclockwise. So, and this is more than a full revolution, just like the other one. I just have to figure out how much more. Okay, so if I go 360 degrees, so 360, so that would be 720 minus 360. And it doesn't matter, positive, negative, just as long as you're turning in the right direction. So 720 minus 360 is obviously 360. Okay, so that means I go another revolution and I end right here at 0 and -2 pi. So at this location, that means we went right 1, which means we didn't go up or down, which means sine is 0. Okay, so remember those axes values. This is a really important concept because those axes values always have to be 0, 1, or -1, because remember it's a unit circle, as in 1 unit. So you go 1 unit over, 1 unit up, 1 unit left, 1 unit down. Okay? So tangent of -945. So we don't have tangent. I don't have a way to just quickly know tangent, but I do know that tangent is equivalent to the ratio of sine over cosine. So I still have to figure out what that reference angle is. So again, I'm turning negative. So I know I go 1 revolution. So that gives me 945 minus 360, which gives me 585. So I still need another revolution. So I'm going to do another revolution. That gets me back to here. So I do minus 360. So I have 225. So if I want to turn, then -225, I go here. This is -90, -180, -225, because I haven't made it to -270 yet. So I'm right here. So then to find my reference angle, I'm going to do 225 minus 180, which is going to give me 45. So my reference angle is 45 degrees. Now I know at 45, hand trick or chart, that this is the square root of 2/2 over the square root of 2/2. But then I have to figure out, are they positive or negative? I can see I'm in quadrant 2, where cosine is negative, but sine is positive. And of course, anything over itself is 1, and a positive divided by a negative is negative. Okay, one more. Cosine of 4pi/3. So clearly the reference angle is pi/3. Now, whether you're using the hand trick or the chart, if you're using the hand trick, you're going to put down that pointer finger because that's pi/3. And I know cosine of pi/3 is 1/2. Okay, so again, 4pi/3, I know that this is 3pi/3 because it's a single pi. So I'm 1/3 past that. So this is pi/3 here. So I'm 1/3 past that, so I am in the third quadrant where cosine is negative. Okay, so the big thing here is the hand trick or the chart is going to get you that numeric value. Okay, so once you have the numeric value, the part that you seem to be struggling with is figuring out what quadrant you're in. Okay, now I'm going to show you just really quickly another way to do this, and I'm hoping that it doesn't confuse you. And if it does, don't watch, don't listen, just let it go. Okay, so let's say that we can go back, let's say here, okay? 9 pi over 4. All right, so let's do 9 divided by 4. So 9 divided by 4 is obviously 2.25. 2 1/4. So if I'm making a revolution 2 1/4, okay, so that means I have went a full 2 pi, right? And then another quarter is 1/4 into that angle. Okay, now the reason, or into that quadrant, the reason I worry that this can confuse you is I'm afraid you're going to count quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 as 1, 2. But 2 pi, so this is 2.25 pi equivalent, okay? So 2 pi is here, so you went past 2 pi 1/4, so you're in the first quadrant. Okay, so just be super cautious because this would be 2.5 pi. Okay, so I'm just saying be super cautious. I would say tend to stick to what we've done in class and what we've practiced. That way you don't get confused. Okay.